Hi everyone, I am Gabriella Agostinelli with Berardi Immigration Law, and today we are talking about the E-2 visa. So as I sit here in snowy Buffalo, New York at these Arctic conditions that we have, I want to remind you that if you're a Canadian or anywhere else or from anywhere else in the world and you too have a dream of moving to sunny Florida or Arizona or California, it is possible. And that is what we are going to be talking about today. How do I move to the United States? And specifically, we're going to be talking about how to do it by starting or purchasing a business in the United States, resulting in what we call the E-2 Treaty Investor Visa. So first of all, why do we call it the Treaty Investor Visa? Well, it's called the Treaty Visa because it is only available to individuals who are citizens of countries who have a treaty of friendship and commerce with the United States. So for instance, if you're a Canadian, yes, we have such a treaty in place, you are eligible preliminarily for this visa. And then why do we call it the investor? Well, because it requires that you have invested a sum of money into an existing business in the US, which you have purchased, or a new business that you have started. Now, the number one question we always get, well, how much do I have to invest? We'll get there. Just hang tight with me. What I first want to talk about is the general requirements, what the government looks for, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty a little bit more. So the E-2 Treaty Investor Visa is a wonderful vehicle for individuals who are looking to make a new start in the US. Now, some of our clients who come to us, a lot of them are already entrepreneurs. They already have existing businesses in the US. Some of them don't. But really, for somebody who's thinking about doing this kind of visa, we want to make sure that whatever business you are starting in the United States, you have experience in that field already. Maybe you've been an employee of a company doing this thing, and now you are ready to start your own operation doing this thing. Or maybe you've run that business already, an identical business abroad too, and you want to replicate your success in the US. That's fine too, but either way, we have to show you have the ability to develop and direct this business. Now, then let's get to the meat and potatoes of this application. Here, we have to be able to document with the government that an investment has occurred, and we have to carefully evidence every step of this investment. First, did this money come from a lawful source? The first thing the government's going to be looking for is to make sure that there is no money laundering or any kind of illegal activity involved here. So the government wants to see, where did that money come from that you're able to invest? Did it come from a sale of a large property? Did it come from business income from an affiliated business that you already operate abroad? And we have to show the source of where it came from. We then have to show how the investment actually moved from your home country to the United States. So whether that's through wire transfers or bank statements, where we show that we have to show, in fact, that the money was moved properly. And the third thing we have to show is that the money, in fact, has been, as we say, irrevocably committed, which is just an industry term, meaning it's been spent. So we can't just say, hey, I transferred $100,000 of my big Canadian business income into a US bank account. Now get me a visa. We can't. We have to show you've actually spent that money. Now, for a lot of people, obviously that makes them feel uncomfortable. It feels like putting the cart before the horse. I don't want to spend all this money, and what if I don't get the visa? Well, the unfortunate reality is you're not going to get the visa unless you've shown that you really have skin in the game and you've spent these funds. So we evidence that through contracts and through invoices and receipts and bills and credit card statements showing the money has left the account that the money was originally transferred to. Now, there's several different ways this investment can actually take place, how it can actually be evidenced, but one way or another, we have to show it came from a lawful source, it was moved to this US business in some kind of way, and it was actively spent. A huge cornerstone of the investment, now let's get to the heart of everyone's question, is how much do I have to spend? Well, people, The regulations are silent. There is no dollar figure we actually need to spend in order to get this E2 visa. Rather, it's a test of proportionality, meaning for a business of this nature that you have chosen in the United States, how much realistically would I need to spend to show how serious I am about getting this business off the ground? For a lot of my clients, 70,000, 80,000 is enough. 100,000 is probably the median in a lot of cases. But if you want to start a big manufacturing plant, well, I'm afraid to say you might want to put down $1 million in order to do this. So it's a sliding scale of what is appropriate given the nature of what you do. And again, there is no dollar figure in the regulations. Another big part of the E2 visa is being able to show that you are, really the whole spirit of the E2 visa is that we are showing that we are bringing investment and jobs to the U.S. government, to the U.S. economy. So what I mean by that is that you have to be able to show that you have a plan, that not only are you investing money in the U.S., but you are creating jobs for U.S. citizens. So what happens is that to evidence that, we have all individuals create a very robust business plan. Either by themselves, they can prepare it, or they can hire a professional to do so for them to show exactly how they're going to make this happen. What's the market analysis? What are your long-term goals and objectives? What are your 5-year hiring projections and financial projections? What's your P&L going to look like? The government really wants to see that you've thought about this and you have a plan for how at the end of your approval period, you are going to be able to document to the government that in fact, you have delivered on the things that you said that you are going to do. To be clear, the E2 visa is not a vehicle for you to just start your own business, you be the only employee of the business, and not really grow the business substantially. The government wants to see growth. They want to see growth in both revenues, growth in both headcount, and that you are continuing to make an impact locally in your community. So we include this business plan with every filing to make that clear. When it comes to the actual process of the E2 visa, that's the second question we always get. Well, how long is it going to take me to get this visa? Because I want to be in the US yesterday. My kids are starting school. We need to be done by the end of the summer. Okay. I will give you a tally of that in just a moment. First, let's talk about what the process actually entails. So when you engage with an attorney to prepare, or you try to do it yourself, perhaps, when you put together this application, we need to be able to document all of those components we just discussed. And then what happens, and it's a little bit different depending on which country you're coming from, but let's talk about Canadians, for instance, right now, because that is probably going to be the largest demographic watching this right now. For what many consulates, including Canada, require is that we send a portion, just a specific number of pages of this narrative of the full application via email to the U.S. Department of State. That is because the U.S. Department of State runs all of our embassies and consulates, and the e-visa program is part of that. That means if you want to apply for an e-visa and you're outside the United States, you will need to make your application at the designated U.S. embassy or consulate. In Canada, it is a U.S. consulate in Toronto. So we send a portion of the application documents to the U.S. consulate in Toronto, giving the basics of the story that we're trying to present here. This is what they're aiming to do in the US. This is where they got the money from, how it was transferred, how it's been spent. Here's the resume showing how they're in a position to develop and direct. And here's a portion of the business plan showing how they intend to make that growth and make that impact in the United States. Once the U.S. consulate in Toronto, for instance, has reviewed the application, they will reach back out to us and say, you can now proceed to scheduling the visa interview for you to come in for your appointment. You schedule the visa interview, and on the day of your appointment, you bring a full binder of materials showing how, again, you qualify for this visa. Upon a successful interview, which, by the way, typically only lasts 10 minutes or less, where you're standing up behind a plexiglass wall, this is not a sit-down intensive interview, you will be given a clear indication that you have been approved or whether there is an issue or you need to come back again. Thankfully, knocking on wood as we say this, we have very, very high approval ratings, because as long as the application is put together properly in accordance with all regulatory requirements, every administration wants to approve these cases because every president looks good saying, I brought jobs and revenue to the United States. So once you proceed to finishing the appointment, they will tell you whether you've been approved or not. They will typically hold on to your passport for about 5 to 8 business days, during which time they will create an actual e-visa page in your passport. They will then courier that back to you. And once you have that visa, you are able to enter the United States and begin working. In Canada, and for most countries around the world, or I should say many countries around the world, the validity period of that e-visa is 5 years. And you also, during that time, can go back and renew at the end of that period for another e-visa, so long as you can show that you continue to meet all of those eligibility requirements. Using the original investment, of course, you don't need to show, technically, you don't have to show there's been new investment, but you do have to show you've delivered on growing as a business in terms of revenue and headcount, and that you continue to have, all of your legal documents. Nothing has really changed that much. Another question that we get all the time is, I have a 5-year visa, how long will I be admitted to the United States for? Because having a visa of a certain validity does not mean you'll be actually admitted to the US for the same period of time. And the rule in the United States is, with investor visas, regardless of the length of your visa, you will be admitted to the United States for a 2-year period per time. So you must take care to exit and re-enter the United States, and carefully monitor your admission dates to ensure that you are not overstaying your status admission, which also changes depending on how long your nexus or your passport are valid for. That will be taken into consideration as well, so watch out with that. But finally, the biggest question we get, besides the mechanics of the E2 itself, is, how do I get a green card in the United States? And this becomes a little bit trickier. So there are always going to be multiple routes to getting a green card in the United States. Let's say you move here as a single person and you fall in love with a US citizen. Well, you can get a green card that way, of course. Or if you have a relative who is a US citizen already, you can obtain a green card that way. But assuming you're not one of those lucky individuals, there's a few other ways that you can get a green card based on employment. The thing you need to know, though, is the most popular way that we obtain green cards for in the United States, which is what we call the PERM process, where an employer will test the labor market to make sure there's no other qualified worker for the job, and will then sponsor you for a green card. If you own the E2 enterprise, you are not qualified for this because it is viewed as self-employment by the government, which is not allowed in these type of filings. So you're going to have to find another alternative method for finding a green card. And that will be, you do have a few other choices. You can show, let's say you already have an affiliated operation in Canada, the operating company that continues to operate, continues to employ individuals and generate revenues. You might be eligible to file something called the multinational manager green card petition. That's a possibility. Another thing that you can look towards, let's say you're doing something, the mission of your business is very much in line with the national interests of the US government, whether it's the current policies of that particular presidential administration or some long-standing policy in the United States of, yes, we want to encourage more manufacturing jobs or more jobs in the energy sector or more jobs in AI, if you can make a strong showing that you, in fact, have the opportunity to align the United States interests with your business mission, the government may grant you a green card on that basis. And finally, now this is going to be for a smaller portion of folks, but for those who have invested huge sums of money, $1 million or more, in the U.S. business and have created several jobs in doing so, you may be eligible for something we call the EB-5 green card, which entitles you, which is basically the investor green card. But there's a lot of requirements to go with it and a lot of work that does too. So guys, short and sweet, E2 investor visa is a fabulous way to move to the United States. For some individuals, it may lead to a long-term ability to move here and move your family here and put down new roots. At the very least, you'll be able to come here for several years and live your life and enjoy your time, so long as you continue to deliver on the things that are intrinsic to the spirit of the E2 visa, which again is job creation and investment in revenue generation in the U.S. If you have any questions, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. All of our attorneys are extremely well versed in the E2 visa category, and this is a huge part of our practice, and we'd be happy to help if you have any questions. Take care.